So in this video, I'm going to talk about how to find video tutorials as a way to access the content for biology class. So right off the main page, there should be a course resource folder where you can find under content resources, the biology conceptual resources link. And if you click on that, it will open folders for every unit that we're going to cover in the year. For example, if you open the ecology unit, and there are subtopics usually within folders. Let's say we pick Introduction to Ecology. There should be underneath the folder a folder called Podcasts. And inside there, I put a collection of videos that are some of my favorite videos by different YouTubers on the internet. So, for example, in this one, we have some videos from Bozeman Science, Bright Storm, Crash Course, Savage Biology, and at the very top, when I have videos of my own, you will see these numbered videos. In this case, it goes from 1 through 29, which are my videos, what I recorded explaining things about the topic. And the reason why there are so many is that they're short videos, kind of focus on one part of the topic instead of making bigger ones. And so that's kind of how they roll. Sometimes they run long though. You can have each individual video get up to 10 minutes, but most of the time they're going to be shorter than that. So that's one way you can find them. But a more straightforward way of finding videos that directly relate to the topic that you're working on is by clicking on the very first link of any given unit. So sticking with ecology, if we look at the third unit of the year, which covers ecology, there's a link at the very top of the unit. And if we click on that, it should open the standard resource and practice document for that unit. And that's just a document that lists the standards on the first page. And then on the second page, it breaks down some key resources and then a video collection. Now, this video collection will include videos that I create often for the topic. Right? So I'm going to show you actually one from a different unit. Let's look at the one for evidence for evolution. I'll do the same thing. The first link of the unit will have resources. So you can see there, I have some key resources at the top, and then right after that, I will have my videos under the video lectures. Now, the really cool thing about these videos is that they come along with a lecture guide, as you can see, that is linked here directly. And if you are navigating from the conceptual resources folders, the lecture guide lives in a study guide folder for that topic. So there it is, the one for general ecology, right? So what it is, and I'm going to open the one here for evolution, and I'm going to go ahead and open also the podcast folder where all the evolution videos can be found. So what it is a list of words in outline format that cover what I am going to cover on the video. And what I like to do with the lecture guide is use this as a skeleton to help me take notes. So I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of how that would look like in a video. And at the same time, this also shows you how to take some outline notes, right? Now, this is the main topic that's going to be covered in that video. And then these are subtopics. Now, sometimes you will find, not in this topic, but sometimes you'll find red words within the lecture guide. And that just means those are advanced concepts that are not really included in the main information that you're supposed to know for grade level biology. They're more college level concepts, which help AP biology or IB biology or some college level biology course. So you can skip those pieces. You can still watch them, but you don't really need to worry about studying them if you're on a high school biology class level. But this one actually doesn't have any of that. Everything goes for evolution. All of these are important concepts that need to be covered. So let's look into this first videos about evolution as an example on how to do this. Now, a lot of the first introduction videos are literally just that. They're just going to be introducing the major concepts about that topic. So I'm going to go ahead and split my screen to have the lecture guide be in one side. And what I would do is, as a student, that you can't really use this lecture guide, but you can make a copy of it. So that's what I'm going to do. And then once you have your own copy of it, you can move it to a folder where you can find it within your drive. And you can double click in one of the lecture guides. So now I'll start right at the top. And so the cool thing about using the lecture guide is that you automatically have a list of key terms to know for the topic, right? This is First video is pretty much just a history of evolution, and the second page kind of gets into how evolution actually works, the evidence that we have for it, how the genetics is involved with it, etc. So there's a lot of awesome things in this lecture series. Now, after you finish studying, this copy that you created becomes full of your notes. So then what you can do is use the original lecture guide as a key term checklist where you can do plus signs, negative signs, or check marks method of studying. I have a different video that talks about how to do that to make sure that you know that key term or that topic, and that helps you study and make sure that you know the information and you can be ready to teach it for somebody else. So you can use the original lecture guide as a study list that you can check off if you are able to reteach it yourself, and then you can look at the notes that you actually copy and fill out as your answer key when you're studying with yourself. But let's go ahead and watch a part of that, and I'm going to actually just watch a part that's about. Let's do evidence for evolution, and let's look the one for embryology, which is here somewhere on the second page. So obviously you would study this in order, but I'm doing it as a demonstration. So let's check it out. How to study, use a video to study.
We've been talking about evidence for evolution, and this is one of those cool examples of evidence that's hard to refute. And we call this embryology, or the study of embryonic formation and development.
All right, so I like to pause the video a lot as the teacher is explaining things. Another thing you can do is also slow down the video if the teacher's talking too fast. I generally like to go 0.75. Half is a little bit too much. The teacher sounds drunk. You can also try to put subtitles on. Sometimes you have this like auto-generated subtitles that you can do, especially if the video's on YouTube, that can automatically generate the video subtitles for you. But it isn't always an available option. But if it's a YouTube video, it usually is. So what I like to do is pause when the teacher gives you a key concept that I should probably write about. So embryology is, so I'm going to put it here in my notes. And I just use this in outline format, so I just keep breaking down further into the outline, and I'll just say it's the study of development and growth of embryos, which are early stages of life, right, of animals, or actually, in general, of organisms, because plants have embryos too. But obviously, the teacher's talking about animal embryos over here. Let's keep going.
And when you see and compare the ways that different kinds of animals evolve, you will see that as they change and develop in the uterus, it kind of mimics the evolutionary steps that particular branch of the tree of life had to go through.
All right. So if it still sounds a little drunk when it's at 0.75, that's probably because you can handle full speed. So I'm going to write this key fact here. So that's like he says that the stages mimic the evolutionary progression of that branch of the tree of life. That's pretty interesting. So let's take a look at that. And I'm not going to go back to full speed because it does sound a little bit too drunk for me, at least. Remember, you can always slow down or speed up here as needed.
And that's actually beautiful, in my opinion, to actually see. That you see a picture of evolution as you look to the stage of the embryonic development. For example, when you look at the first stage of development of the human embryo, as you go from a zygote to a morula, to a blastula, to a grassula, and then you do a neurula, and then the neurula starts differentiating and making different cells. On the first few days, between 9 and actually our first month, the first 4 weeks, we're very, very tiny embryos, and it's not going to be until the 23rd or 28th day that we actually start looking significantly like a primate, like you see over here at the very end. Before then, we go through stages where we even have tails. Look at that. So definitely a tail over there. We go through stages that we may even have gill slits.
So these are all interesting things. So it takes quite a while for the human embryo to look primate-like. Um, Humans have tails and even gills in early stages. Right? So you might be wondering, like, how come we have tails and gills? We'll learn more about that in a second here.
Like fish do, or amphibians. And we even have stages that we look decisively reptile-like. And that's because we are reptiles.
Ah, there you go. So this is evidence that we are reptiles. We are just reptiles that evolved in a different direction. But we still have reptile genes and fish genes and amphibian genes inside of us, which are active early in the stages of embryonic development.
That's because we are amphibians. What? Think about it. We evolved from an early amphibian. And then after that we became reptiles, and then the reptiles evolved into mammals. So mammals evolved from an ancient reptile. Reptiles evolved from an ancient amphibian. Amphibians evolved from an ancient fish. And so as you see the progression of embryonic development, what you're actually seeing is a successive activation of more and more advanced kinds of genes.
Right. So what you're seeing is this successive activation of more advanced genes. And when he says advanced, what he means is genes of not better genes, but genes that are more um, that have changed compared to the genes that came from before, right? So the human genes activate later on, and before that, we may have fish or amphibian-like genes or reptile-like genes in the very beginning, because that is literally where we come from.
And as those genes activate sequentially throughout the embryonic development purpose, you actually see the stages of which the evolutionary process of that animal kind of went through, with some variations, of course. But that only proves that we actually are evolved from previous life forms. And in fact, if you actually look at a human embryo around 9 days, really up close, you might not even be able to tell the difference between an embryo and an embryo from another species, unless you have a very well-trained eye.
That is an interesting fact. I'm going to write that down too. So at early stages, it is difficult to tell a human embryo apart from that of related species. So you might look at a chicken, sorry, embryo and confuse that with the human embryo.
Look, for example, how the salamander looks like, all right, at different kinds of stages. How the tortoise looks like at different kinds of stages. How the chicken looks like at different kinds of stages. Look how close the chicken and the tortoise are. A reptile and a bird. Look at the rabbit, which is a mammal. Look at the man. We're all so similar from each other. Now, of course, there's a little bit of differentiation, but that's because evolution has changed the homology a bit. But it's an example of similarities that exist between that.
So these similarities are examples of shared ancestry. He used the word homology there. That's a word that had already been explained earlier in the lecture in another video about evidence for evolution. And so over here where it says homologous structure, so if you were watching in order like you're supposed to, you would understand what the teacher is talking about at that point.
And if you actually compare the similarities, you will see those structures, which are so unique, and it's kind of hard to deny. So again, embryology and the successive activation of more and more advanced genes. Again, DNA, see, is a key here. Shows you that evolution is evidenciated by a lot of research.
So yet another piece of evidence for evolution is the point here. And I'm going to just add that piece that you said that DNA is key to the note that I had about genes. So there you go. So now you transform that bullet that was before on the lecture guide or the original lecture guide. All you had was the bullet saying embryology, right? what I now did is I added my own facts within or underneath that bullet. So that is kind of why it's cool to study with the lecture guide. But not all videos are going to have a lecture guide for you to use. Sometimes you might be watching a different video from a different teacher, and there might not be a lecture guide to use to go along with it. So I'm going to show you that, but I also want to show you that in some topics, you might also be able to find uh, under the notes and handouts folder, notes already taken from you as if you had watched those videos. So you often find an advanced lecture notes, which those are actually meant for college level biology. But there's usually notes that have the same name as the topic. Like, for example, these are ecology notes here. And those will be notes that someone watching the videos would have already taken. So think of it as like someone filled in the lecture guide for me. And so that's what you would be like. So that's another cool thing that most topics will have. And when they do, you will often find that in the key resources at the top of the unit. So like you would have some, look, for example, here's an example, notes on evolution, right? So let's open that. That would be literally as if you were looking at the lecture guide, but completed. So here we are on the lecture guide, right? And that's talking about Darwin's history. And you can see, oops, let me just show you that part, right? You can see how the notes that you see on the left are literally completed from the lecture guide that's on the right. So a lot of topics will have that. So that's pretty cool. And when they do, as you saw, it will be linked at the top of the unit. But like I said, there might be other videos that cover that, and perhaps they might be better than Mr. Lima's videos on evolution. So let's look at Stated Clearly's What is Natural Selection video as an example of that. Now, there are a lot of awesome teachers on YouTube, and some of my favorites are Crash Course, Amoeba Sisters, Bozeman Science, and Kirk Stack, Khan Academy, Stated Clearly. And you can find some of these favorites listed on some of my resources within the Schoology page for my course. Now, if you go, you click one of these videos, remember they will not have a study guide. So what I'm going to be showing you is how to take notes yourself. And to do that, I probably would start by putting the name of the video that I'm going to watch at the top. So I'll say, Stated Clearly, what is natural selection?
Stated Clearly presents What is natural selection? Natural selection is one of several key concepts contained within the theory of evolution. To understand exactly what
All right, so natural selection is part key concept within the theory of evolution. So I just write main ideas of what they're saying. And
natural selection is and why it's so important, let's first take a quick look at two other evolutionary concepts, descent with modification and the overarching idea of common descent.
all right, so he's introducing some key terms he's going to talk about. So I'm going to write them down. Descent with modification and common descent. And they said they are related. Let's keep going.
Descent with modification is the observable fact that when parents have children, those children often look and behave slightly different than their parents and slightly different than each other. They descend from their parents with modification.
So that's the idea that offspring come from parents but aren't identical to parents.
The differences found in offspring are partially due to random genetic mutations. Common descent is the idea that all living things on Earth.
So random genetic mutations are part of what caused that modification.
Earth are related. They descended from a common.
All right, so common descent. All life on Earth is related. Share common ancestors.
I'm an ancestor. Through the gradual process of descent with modification over many, many generations, a single original species is thought to have given rise to all the life we see today. The common descent of all life on Earth is not a directly observable fact. We have no way of going back in time to watch it happen. Instead, common descent is a conclusion based on a massive collection of facts.
So that's interesting. So that's right there. So this is a conclusion based on a large collection of facts, but it's not directly observable. But it doesn't mean that we don't know that to be true or to be our best explanation. It just means that we can't obviously go to past and see it, but we can still piece it together.
Facts found independently in the study of fossils, genetics, comparative anatomy.
All right, so let's get some of that evidence listed here. So some of the evidence that he's mentioning it includes fossils, genetics, comparative anatomy. What else has got?
Mathematics, biochemistry, and species distribution.
All right, so we got mathematics. I would actually call that bioinformatics. And then we have molecular biology and even species distribution. And there's more, as I see, talk about in other videos. And City clearly has a whole separate video just on the evidence of evolution as well.
Distribution. Because the evidence for common descent is so overwhelming, the concept has been around since ancient times. In the past, however, it was rejected by many philosophers and scientists for one main reason.
So it's a old concept that was rejected in the past, and let's see what the reason is.
You cannot get order and complexity from random chaos alone.
So it was rejected in the past due to a myth, right? Let's I'll put that underneath as a reason why. So notice how I create like an outline format where I push sub concepts of that subtopic to the right, and so as you go into the outline, each layer of the outline is related to the layer above it. So that's how you take outline notes, and it's totally okay to abbreviate as much as you want. So, for example, you can say here, order and complexity not come from chaos or randomness. And you can see, by the way, how I like to pause as I'm watching it and write as many as I can of the main ideas.
The bodies and behaviors of living things are extremely complex and orderly. Descent with modification simply produces random variation. All through history, no one could explain how complex life arose from simple life through random variation until Charles Darwin discovered natural selection.
So that means natural selection is the explanation for how complex and organized life can come from random change. And I will admit right now that it's not a complete explanation because Darwin is only introducing an idea. He didn't know about genetics, but obviously what we know now goes way beyond what he actually introduced. But anyways, that's the idea of taking notes from a video. I'm not going to take the whole video here because this video is already a bit long. But you just outline with subtopics as you're going through the notes. You can abbreviate things. Ultimately, you have to be the one that understands what you are writing. And in doing this, you can take notes on other teachers' videos and then use those notes to review and study just like you would any other kinds of notes. I cannot stress enough, especially for a student that likes someone to explain things to them, that prefers that as opposed to reading the textbook. This can be a great way to access the content. And of course, you also should know that this is not a replacement to read a textbook, which is where your test questions actually come from. but it can be something that you do if your textbook isn't working for you, or as an additional level of support. And sometimes I will just watch the videos without taking notes, especially if I've already taken notes on the textbook, as a second layer of preparation for my learning, or kind of like to help me kind of understand that a little bit better. And that's okay too. But I like taking notes on a video because that makes me pay attention. That makes me make sure I'm taking in more. And so hopefully you use some of these strategies. And I'm telling you, there are really awesome YouTube teachers that I always link on my resources that can help you with this stuff. So I hope you take advantage of it.